And welcome back to the Black Psychologist Podcast, episode 29, the best podcast in the world. All right. I am one half of your humble and gracious host and clinician here for your listening pleasures, Dr. Kyle Osborne. He is I and I am him. And of course, I'm never ever here by myself. I'm here with the one and only, the man of the hour, the man with the power, Dr. Jason Coleman. How are you, good brother?
I'm good. I'm good, my brother. How you feeling, man?
Here, man. I'm here. I'm doing well. Doing very well. It's October. Here we are. We moving right along into this fall season. How's everything with you?
Can't complain, man. Long weekend, but I got some rest in. Got a little camping trip in. And I got to watch some good boxing. So self care all around, and it's back to the grind this week. So I'm not complaining. I see you got the t-shirt on.
Oh yeah,
You know?
absolutely. Again, we're always like, September was suicide prevention month. We're gonna continue with that as always. Of course, even though September was the month that we observed it, it's every month, every day. We want to make sure we having that suicide awareness, and that's gonna absolutely actually fit into one of the topics we're gonna be talking about. So yeah, always, man, and as always, we want to thank all of our listeners and our watchers for watching, for listening, for commenting. Getting a lot of good feedback about the episode, so we appreciate everybody's support. So continue to like, subscribe, share. Send questions or comments to the Black Psychologist Podcast at gmail.com. We appreciate it, man. We're at episode 29, so we're moving right along here.
Definitely, man. I forgot to say that, but definitely want to thank everybody who takes the time to listen. Always humbled by the support. So we're gonna definitely continue to put out the content and just want to say thank you before we move on. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Jay. So listen, the age-old question of video games and mental health. All right.
Yeah,
It's
man.
been
Yeah.
it's been for generations since Atari and Nintendo and Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis and all up to PS5 now. Right. Do or are video games hazardous? Are they good for your mental health? Are they, do they are they harmful? Well, apparently the FDA has approved a mobile game that could actually help treat ADHD in children. All right. So this game is called Endeavor RX, and this could actually be a part of the future of ADHD treatment in children. So the game itself has like some really interesting concepts and has like an undertone and has gone through like all this different types of clinical testing. All right. So I'm gonna explain and break it down to like what the game looks like. All right. So if you were to first see the game, at first glance, Endeavor RX it looks very similar to like Subway Surfer and Temple Run, where pretty much the player is like dodging a lot of obstacles as they navigate through all these other different worlds. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, all right, I was the man at Subway Surfer and Temple Run, bro. Like, listen, I mean, like, I was a beast at that. Like, even me playing with the baby girl and her friends, you know how you could play it. You saw like everybody's user names and everything. I was killing it, bro. I was killing it. So I just want to put that out there that if this game is like that, this might be another some more records for me to break. All right. So yeah, so the goals of the game are that it's challenging motor skills and attention in kids, which tend usually to be the two areas that people with ADHD struggle with.
Right.
So what the game does is that the gameplay specifically challenges um children to help manage multiple tasks at once while also avoiding distractions that the games throw at them. So, the game's website and the makers say that the game is supposed to be challenging, and through like each difficulty level, it adapts to how well the player is performing. And so it has like a short play time of like 25 minutes. Usually they say around 5 days a week that someone should be playing it. And studies that were done have found that the kids that played actually had the kids with ADHD had improved attention. So they're looking at it as like it's going to be more like therapy in the video game form, right? So it sounds like a pretty cool way to engage kids through exercises that, something that they're familiar with. So, reading this article, what were your thoughts about this?
I thought it was interesting, right? For a variety of reasons. One, obviously, because it's a video game. Like we know video games, how popular they are with children. Um, Especially some of the concerns people have had in the past with children, especially children that have ADHD, with spending excessive amounts of time, right? Like playing video games. Um, so for a bunch of reasons, right? Number one, we don't know how much this is going to cost. So that's one thing. We don't know that's going to be the price of a regular video game. So that's potentially a barrier. But even if it's another thing that us as practitioners can kind of use in the office, right? When we're giving kids off time from traditional like treatments and interventions, right? Or if it's just something that mom, a dad or a caregiver can use when we're in their car, or as a reward at the end of the day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because with a lot of children, I'm thinking about, again, and not even this as a standalone kind of treatment, but building this in, with like a token economy type of situation, right? Um, think about some of the benefits that it could bring to the school setting. You know what I mean? When you have children that you could potentially pull out of the classroom and, reward them with 5-10 minutes of video game time in the middle of the day. You know what I mean? If they're kind of getting off task and things like that. So I think that's great. I think it says a lot in terms of like the future of ADHD treatment when it comes to like video games, potentially like virtual reality. I'm speculating now, but stuff like that. And it's interesting, right? Because when you start kind of looking at, the skills they're trying to improve, of course, is primarily aimed towards, the primarily inattentive type, to kind of improve those skills. But again, avoiding distractions, you know what I mean, helping them to kind of focus on multiple tasks, improving their concentration. These are all things that children with ADHD struggle with. So I don't see, too much downside to it. With most things, again, the one potential barrier I see is people kind of like seeing the video game and kind of, maybe saying like, okay, I can just buy a video game that I see as similar and it might have the same effects,
Mm-hmm.
and that type of stuff. Potentially, but in terms of what it could do as a product, I see like a lot of benefits, right? Also, just like as we was talking about the conversation in general with like just video games, like I started thinking about like all during like when we were growing up, well, at least for me, like video games were kind of stigmatized as like negative because they reduce like physical activity, which I totally understood, right? Um, so they were kind of like unhealthy because of that. And I still kind of agree with that to a certain degree in terms of keeping some kids inside, you know what I mean? And maybe that's anecdotal and we're just getting old, but I don't know. I don't know if the research supports that, but I would suppose it does. But I still think that that's kind of one of the bad things. But my mindset has kind of changed with reading these articles and being through the pandemic in terms of the social skills aspect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when our ability to connect physically was taken away, I was encouraging parents to allow their children, to let them connect with their friends through the video games, right?
Yeah.
Um, Especially when they were out of school. You always want to keep it with moderation, but especially when they're out of school. So I don't know. What did you think? Because we always heard negative kind of opinions about video games when it came to physical activity and screen time and social skills, but the pandemic might have changed some of that.
I think you said something I want to key in on is like the screen time, and I think it's that balance factor. Um, I hope that games like Endeavor RX and I'm sure there are some other games that are waiting in the wings that are currently being developed that are going to be helpful towards specific mental health conditions. But I like the direction that this is going in for the reason that this is hopefully gonna help destigmatize like that, that idea that video games will rot your brain, right? It's going to turn you into like this soulless zombie. You're just going to be sitting in front of the television. I think you have to keep in mind that video games are completely different. Like, and you spoke to that a little bit, in that maybe especially when we were growing up, when we had like the Super Nintendos, or we had the Sega Genesis, we had the first couple PlayStations and Xboxes. You pretty much, outside of like the multiplayer ability, where you were able to have like 2 or 3 people that could like you would be playing with, like in the same setting, like, or in the same room. Like, yeah, you were sitting in front of like the screen, depending on the game, maybe hours at a time. Now, like you mentioned, is that gaming is almost not all online, but that it has that capability, and this is how people are connecting. So you have that social aspect where people are able to interact with individuals all over the place, right? Research has found that video game, like especially that have that online social component, alleviate symptoms of like depression, as far as like that loss of pleasure, right? Or the situation where the social aspect is like you feel part of a community. Like,
Right.
if you've ever played Call of Duty online, or you've played some of these other different games online, it's like there's a team, right? Like you're in it. It's like 4 or 5 people to a team, and like you feel like you're a part of a community. Like,
Right.
you're around like-minded people that are all participating towards a common goal, right? Everyone shares that goal and those same values. So that's that social aspect that you mentioned, that I feel like now, as opposed to years ago, where you were just pretty much isolated to like 1 or 2 players. Like now, you have these games where you got people from all over the country, all over the world, that are playing these games, and you're having conversations. Everyone's working towards a certain, towards the same goal. So I feel like that does a lot for the social concept. It's a lot different than, our parents with the, you need to get out and, like you said, do this, be active, and all these other different things. I totally understand that. And like you said, that's very important. But it's different now, right? These video games have a completely different interface and component that allows people to be social. And especially during COVID, like that was a lot of people's outlet or the communication
Right.
outside of like social media, due to the restrictions. So I like the direction that this is going. I'm liking that, this component, and people are being more receptive to it, and the fact that they're doing research that that's actually showing and displaying the evidence that this is helpful.
I mean, listen, like in reading this article, like I'm always, most of the time, like when just looking at myself where I fall, I'm usually the moderation guy, right? So when I look at this, there's certain things I agree with, like totally, right? Like in some aspect, when they're saying like it builds self-esteem, right? And some of this is anecdotal, but it's like, like I've seen kids who aren't as physically gifted, right? And no matter what any of us say, they're not going to really, they're going to be, they're not going to really succeed on the basketball court, on the soccer field, on the softball team,
Mhm.
but they are very good at playing at video games, right? They're not artistically gifted, but they find their place there, right? They have other people who they're just as good at, people that they're trying to be as good at, and they fall and they find their place and their people in that group, right?
Mhm.
So in terms of like that self-esteem, and kind of building your social circle, it can be very beneficial, right? Also, and this is kind of where I go back towards the moderation piece. I've seen a lot of like parents, and I mean not just dads, moms and dads, right, bonding with children playing video games, right? Oh, we play video games together. Now the moderation part is where I come to, is like if that's the only kind of thing that you asking them about, is there anything else you do with your parents? And it's kind of like no, then sometimes you kind of wonder if, I don't want to, well, let me not say it's a convenient thing, but you know what I mean. There are other ways that are beneficial that you want to engage your children too,
Mhm.
that are more face to face and different things. But I do see a lot of benefits, right? Now, one thing in the article that I wasn't really in agreement with was where they was talking about the emotional regulation part of it. And they were kind of talking about it in the framework of like losing a game or destroying your television. because you lost the game, and the mother, the mother or the parent saying, okay, now you can't play your video game for 2 weeks. And then the next time the child shows more emotional regulation. And I kind of thought that was a little bit of a, you know what I'm saying? Now it is an article. It is an article. So that might have been just how they were framing it, but I kind of circled that on my notes, and I was just like, debatable. You know what I mean? So I ain't really agree with that one too much, but again, I do think there's a lot of benefits, and that's kind of the point of this article in this game specifically, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking when I saw that portion, I was thinking because they said they removed the game for like 3 weeks or so, and I was looking at that. Okay, maybe that's utilizing the game system as like a punishment or like it's a privilege. So if you do something, you know, that it's taken away from you, you're starting to learn about punishment, consequences, so on and so forth, things of that nature. That's an aspect I took of it, and I was hoping that like they're leaving some information out that also, you know,
And that's, I think, and that's, bro, that's the only point I was trying to make, is that
yeah.
I think the other things, when you talk about parent-child bonding, self-esteem, social circles, there's more of like a direct connection you could kind of draw than that point. You know what I mean? Like that's maybe I didn't say that clear enough, but that's kind of what I was questioning with that one.
But I like the aspect that the parent-child bonding aspect, because video games have also become more interactive.
Right.
So it's no longer you're just kind of sitting there. Like we have the Wii, right? You have Nintendo, you have all of these other different interactive games. And I know for a fact that they have the Wii in inpatient hospitals. They have them in senior citizens homes. They have them in, so you know, that bonding aspect, they're bridging the gap where you can have mom and dad also playing these different games, these athletic games like the tennis or boxing or these other different like Wii games, and the same thing with Xbox. Like you can have the interactive component where everybody's in the room and everyone's playing, right? Everybody's having a good time, right? They've made it to the point where it's recreational. They've, you know, and it has those benefits to it. So that's why I like where some of the games have become more inclusive, and they've been able to kind of have the bonding aspect of it. Of course, there are other elements that we, you know, have to be taken into consideration and are included. However, I think video games have made tremendous progress in bringing that, you know, okay, everybody can be involved. Everyone, like you said, the community aspect of it, also the mastery, right? The situation of someone working diligently to get to the next level.
Right.
Someone like you said, you can just have someone that's really good at gaming. And let's not forget that gaming is very lucrative these days.
Oh yeah.
So, you know, yeah, not everyone's gonna be the best, like you said, best athlete. However, you may have someone that's able to say, you know what, they're making a pretty decent amount of income or some money in these gaming tournaments, or they could actually get a career in gaming.
Absolutely.
So, you know, as being a programmer, being, you know, all these other different avenues. So I'm happy that it's that stigma is starting to get reduced, that people are starting to see the benefit of not just seeing it like, oh, someone's going to be sitting in front of the television and that's, you know, and it's just limited to that factor. So this is good. And with Endeavor RX, it's not currently available. There is a wait list that the developers have on the website in case like organizations or individuals are interested in getting it. And depending on how well the launch goes, I think of course that's going to affect like availability and other different things of that nature. So you know, again, this is more that step in that development, right? And they, you know, the makers also said that no matter how well this does, it's just not going to take the place of medication for ADHD treatment. It's not going to take the place of, you know, therapy or, you know, like you said, it's going to be in addition to, it's going to be a great, you know, supportive device. And hopefully, like you said, this speaks to a lot of, you know, kids, depending on the age group that this is getting introduced to. This is going to be really helpful, especially kind of helping them with the multitasking aspect of things. So I'm with it, man. I'm totally with it. And again, like if it's on some you know, Temple Run stuff, you know, you might see me on it. I might be the spokesperson. I don't know, Jay. We'll see what happens.
Hey man, listen, all of them TikTok followers, you know.
Hey man, listen, you know, I'll take it.
They might want to give you a call, you know.
All right, so staying with the youth situation. All right, so school's back in session, right? So, COVID, some of the school districts are operating in what's in the protocols and make sure everybody stays healthy. So, in-person school is back. And with it, of course, comes the various obvious bans, like weapons, drugs. Like we talked about a few episodes ago, there are some school districts that are limiting people's clothing and what they're able, their hair and certain backpacks and mask mandates, all those things. But now, surprising number of schools with some small town governments have been actually banning something to symbolize the safety and the freedom of the LGBTQ community, and that is the pride flag. So, what's recently been happening is that, as you know, and I know, the pride flag was created to promote unity, right? However, in some districts and some counties, it's the pride flag is actually being called a political and divisive in some schools across the country. An example would be an Oregon school board actually last week banned educators from displaying the flags or having like any type of stickers like on their doors or in the classroom. I'm going to read some of the quotes. All right. So the quotes from the board says, "We don't pay our teachers to push their political views on our students. It's not their place." This was coming from a school board member. All right. So there were some other different quotes. Hold on. There was another one that said, because after this particular area or this particular school district actually removed the pride flags and then they removed some of the stickers, there was a protest. So hundreds of students staged like a class walkout, and then after the protest, the district actually defended the move in a statement saying they're trying to ensure that all students feel safe regardless of background and identity. Um, and they said that they cited political neutrality in defending their policy. Even this is after they had come under criticism for prohibiting the pride flag, the Black Lives Matter flags, and then they just put they broadened the ban even like last month just to block educators from displaying all symbols that the board deemed political, quasi political, or controversial. So there you have it. What are your thoughts about some of these districts and counties banning the pride flag?
Well, it's I just think it's a couple of things going on, right? Because they'll say like there's a couple of things going on, right? So when they say, you know, they don't pay the teachers to push political views on students, right? That as a statement is true, right? But what that would assume is that because what we're really talking about, I mean, and what state is this in?
This particular one was Oregon.
Right. So Oregon, they probably maybe some of the teachers, display pride flags or Black Lives Matter flags or whatever, but more along in the East Coast, my experience in schools is more so what you see is like the stickers on the classroom doors, right?
Right.
Whether it be the hands, with different colors on them or whatever. And see, the thing is, the problem when you say that is you're trying to conflate the two things, right? Because political views is coming to work with, a re-elect Trump 2024 shirt on, right? Or Biden or whoever it is, right? And talking to the kids about why their parents or so are wrong if they don't agree with you,
Right.
right? Or pushing those issues, right? This is different. This is what we're talking about is like protecting people's like emotional stability, for lack of a better term, right? We're kind of talking about more of a human rights thing. You know what I'm saying? We're protecting people from being persecuted within like a larger structure, right? That is not necessarily looking out to their for their needs and not necessarily attuned to their needs emotionally and otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So to say that it's political views is like disingenuous, right? It's like when people kind of say like, okay, Black Lives Matter is political, right? When what we're talking about is people being killed, right? It, of course, Black Lives Matter has been used by politicians, in a political way, the same way the LGBTQ movement and different, movements have been, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that the specific issue that we're talking about here, safe zones for kids, is political in itself, so it's not, I don't really have much to say after that because, we're talking about safe zones that are there to kind of build up the resilience of these children and provide them with support and resources, right? And for anybody to feel threatened by that, it goes back to the old, under the layers, it's going to be somebody who's in the majority who thinks that they're going to lose something, when other people gain as much as support as they have, which is not true. So I don't really have much to say past that. I mean, um, I've seen this on almost every college campus, high school that I've ever taught in, right? It's kind of part of the diversity push, you know? So I'm glad they walked out. They should continue to, kind of push the issue.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's become commonplace when you go to a lot of different institutions. Like I look at the pride flag is like it's like that old school safe place sign, right, for the LGBT community that says like, all right, when you see the flag or you see the sticker out there, it's like, all right, you're saying to that person, all right, this is a safe place. All right, it's okay for me to be myself here. I can be accepted without any fear. Right. That's what the flag, that's what the symbol, it personifies. It's like it's progress. It's like you said, the word inclusive. Like it shows that when you go into a place of like these are our part of our community values, right? We're not excluding anyone. We're welcoming. We're here to represent. We're here to support. One of the most marginalized, populations in the community. So I think with this message, unfortunately, what it sends to individuals is like, oh yeah, no, we're not thinking, we're not thinking about your needs, right? We're not thinking of pretty much saying like, all right, your mental health or as far as that goes, doesn't really matter.
Right.
Okay, that's what this is. So, and for them to be like you mentioned to say it's political, like nah, this is. I look at that that's like a sad attempt as a district saying that we don't want to show favoritism, so we're just gonna say we're gonna ban everybody. We're gonna
And
say it's like it's really yeah, anything can be deemed political again because you have political pundits that are going to use certain topics or use certain issues as an agenda, right, for their own political gain or for whatever. But for them to say, yeah, like like you're like teachers are going in and they're saying, hey, we got the pride flag. We're gonna talk to you about your sexual orientation. We're gonna talk to you about your sexual identity. Like that's not
and
what it represents,
if we're being if we're being honest, it's disingenuous, right? Because if we're talking about the facts of the matter is we're talking about kids, children and adolescents, right? And then even if we extend it to colleges, we're talking about emerging adults, 18 to 25, which are kids to a lot of us who are over 40, right? Um, and my point is, again, now I'm speaking anecdotally mostly, but the research is there. If we look at suicide attempts ideation with African American kids between the age of 9 and 14, right? If you look at self-harm and suicidal ideation and suicide with children who identify as LGBTQ, in this age group, right? So these are the groups that we're talking about. These are the groups that need the most support. And now we're talking about it's offensive to somebody to hang a shingle or a sign for a child or an adolescent or an emerging adult and say, if you want to talk about something, don't hold it inside, right? Talk about it, right? Because if that same person, either goes to an extreme, circumstance, then the school is going to be saying, why didn't they use the resources, right? But we want to take the resources away. So it's a little bit disingenuous. So I'm gonna leave it there.
Yeah, it's very counterintuitive to, like you said, reach out for help, but then you're gonna take away a symbol that says, "Hey, we're here to help and support you." So, I know it's been a lot of walkouts. It's been a lot of teachers resigning. It's been a lot of protests. So, I'm with those individuals that are fighting this. I hope they continue to fight this. because this is, this is like, again, this is a huge punch in the gut for a lot of kids that are now gonna feel like their school district or their schools don't have their best interests. So we'll continue to watch closely and see, any updates and things how this go. But so staying with the school, so out there in California, we have two students from MacArthur High School in Hollywood. Annie Farouk, I hope I'm saying this name correctly, and Emily Moro or Muru. I'm probably butchering that, so I apologize. So two students at MacArthur High School. Actually were part of a team at their school which won the statewide democracy in action contest with a proposal that students have identification cards for all public middle and high school students that would have suicide prevention hotline, crisis, and other different mental health resources printed on the back sides of these cards. So after winning the democracy in action contest with that proposal, 1 year later, it now became a state law. So, and this is this is the law. This is the team that the MacArthur team actually wrote themselves. So now that it's state law, you have kids that have these cards that they're walking around with, and it has the like the hotline on there and other mental health resources. I thought this is dope, man. This is like really amazing that they were able to do this as high school students,
Oh
even
yeah.
which is even more impressive. So just to have that information, and Jay, you work with kids and with adolescents, like how crucial this could come in handy, right? Just having this information, and just like this is dope, man. I love every part of this. What you think?
Well, first of all, obviously you got to take your hat off to them because, this is another example of like younger people getting things done, right? Not necessarily waiting on adults to do things. And I think it's a good lesson for us, right? Because sometimes adults think they know either best or they know better, right? And kids have opinions too, and they see things differently. And I mean, listen, I learned that talking to my niece and nephews like all the time, at whatever age group that they've been in all along the way. So I think we got to kind of congratulate them for that. The second thing, I think it's a great idea because it's so simple, right? It's getting the information to the people when they would need it the most, right? When it's so crucial, right? Because I'm sure there are young people out there that are that are likely to have like their student IDs with them all the time, right? When people get upset or overwhelmed to that point, what are some of the things that they do? Sometimes they cut off their phone, they isolate themselves, right? And people use the resources that they have around them, you know? So it may make some people more likely to, reach out to somebody or call one of those numbers. So, I think the last thing I will say about it is I think it's something that should be replicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't just happen like overnight. Like
Right.
and I know for any law or any bill to get passed is that now you're going through the different channels of government. Whether you're going through your local government, your city government, your state government, right? This gets passed up the pipeline. So
Right.
there were state reps that were getting involved that helped them with this, lawmakers that had to get involved. Like, so this is why this is so impressive, because this is, you have to be dedicated, and the impact that this is having, like you mentioned, on some of their peers. I don't know if that can really be measured. Day in and day out, these kids are going through everything, right? I think
Right.
that's something that unfortunately, as adults, we make the error of minimizing the stress and some of the issues that these kids are experiencing on a day to day. One of the young folks in this article mentioned that she has had experiences with some of her friends that were depressed that had actually contemplated suicide. So
Right.
that was one of the things that motivated this endeavor, because like you said, like when you're experiencing these overwhelming emotions and these overwhelming thoughts, like you said, you go dark, right? You turn your phone off, and um just you and your thoughts, like on repeat. And sometimes maybe having that card that you can get in contact with somebody, that you can get, call a hotline or do something, right? But that's what the whole point of this card is. And the fact that they were able to get this done, because again, anything that works for government is not happening overnight, despite
Right.
what the initiative is, despite what you win the contest, despite what they say. Oh, we promise you this, X, Y, and Z. This takes time, right? This takes a lot of time and dedication on their part. And who else other than these kids that know what other kids are experiencing, right? They know what their friends are experiencing. They mentioned and provided examples. And we've talked about in the past the numbers of kids that are experiencing severe depression, contemplated, attempted suicide, all these other different numbers. So this is great, man. This is, like
I
you said,
mean,
I hope that more kids, more peers, even more adults continue to pick up the mantle on this.
I mean, listen, this again, the part I don't want to miss that I think is great about it is, of course, it became a state law, and that probably took a long time in terms of high schools and colleges. But
Mm-hmm.
think about how many, organizations and bodies have contact with children, provide them with IDs, right? If we're talking about like daycares, like boys and girls clubs, and don't have that degree, of a political structure in that this is something that they could put on their IDs tomorrow, that most, with a letter to the parents, notifying them, would probably be mutually agreed on as something that could benefit children, in the worst case scenario. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is, I think it's just a lot of us that deal with children, teens, and adolescents. It's just another way of us thinking about just getting certain information to them and resources. So that's all. Of course, when we talk about like public schools and stuff, the avenues we got to go through because the structure is different. But I think it's a good idea, and especially when we kind of segue into the next topic in terms of suicidal ideation. It keeps coming up in the news, right? So
Absolutely.
people
Yeah.
need
So with
resources.
Kodak Black, very, very popular rapper, actually as recent as a couple days ago, has sparked some concern with his fans after posting some tweets before he deleted his social media accounts. So I'm gonna read the tweet that he posted. He wrote, "So lonely, depressed, sad, and effed up. Nobody loved me. Nobody cares. I'm everywhere. Once friends playing in my head, girls playing with my heart. Wish I can go back to the start and I'll never be famous." And then after that, he had deleted all of his social media accounts and things. So this prompted a lot of concern from his fans. I imagine his family, some of his loved ones. Um, and right before we got on, I actually was scrolling. I was online, and he actually updated his status and how his condition. So I'm gonna try to pull this up because this is happening. This is real time. All right, this is reality TV right here. That's fine. It's right here. Breaking news on the Black Psychologist podcast. All right, this is how we roll around here. All right. So shortly after he disabled his social media accounts, he worried his friends and family, and he provided an update. And he said, let me make sure. Apologizing for his actions. He said, "I mean, maybe that wasn't the best thing to tweet, and very selfish of me to let that thought like that succumb. I apologize to me for doubting myself, like I ain't a raw." Uh,
Yeah, I'm reading it now. I'm reading it
yeah,
now.
I'm not, I apologize to me for doubting myself. Like I ain't a raw ass gangster as blah. Um, but thugs need love too, and that's totally unfair to the people that do love me, that do care and want to see me happy and successful. However, that looks like. And then I understand I made a bold statement, but don't worry, I'm not suicidal. I have no plans on harming myself. I've been in maximum prisons, people committing suicide and died from the hands of their cellmates right next to me. I've been beaten by the authorities. 1,000 miles away from home, no point. Contact my
Right.
family, never contemplating taking myself out. I got great support system, surrounded by love. Somebody put a false rumor in my head that drove me to the edge that I can't say, but I'm all okay. I really need a vacation, but being on probation kept me stuck in this unhealthy environment where only my choice is running around in hood thugging. I'm gonna leave it at that. So
So
go ahead, Jeff.
listen, I mean, listen, I'm not. It sounds only. I'm not saying it sounds funny, but obviously he sounds all over the place, right?
Right.
Um, but you kind of understand, right? Because what is his image? His image is a gangster rapper, right? Um, Obviously, from his statement, he acknowledged feeling depressed, even if he didn't say the words. He described it. He acknowledged feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious.
Mhm.
He almost, you can almost even feel comfortable saying that he acknowledged feeling suicidal, right? He said he was pushed to the edge, right? But then the next sentence he says, but don't worry about me. I'm not suicidal. I've been to jail. I've been to prison. I've been in these pressure situations. So again, the only reason why I'm bringing that up is not to disparage him, but we have dissonance, right? When it comes to stigma, again, right? Because you have people equating manhood, right? And how tough you are with whether you have depressive symptoms or suicidal ideation. And that's the only problem I have, right? And I get it because part of it is probably his identity in terms of masculinity as being a black male specifically, and then being a rapper. You know what I mean? But it can be very, it's a very confusing message to send to people, right? Because you're reinforcing the stigma and the stereotype that, black males, are weak when they express, feeling overwhelmed or depressed, or that they can't handle something, right? Especially you can't handle it by yourself. So again, I'm not really blaming him because what I was reading was on TMZ. These people have publicists. All I don't even know that he wrote that. You understand? Well, I
Right.
know he wrote that. Let me not. I know he wrote that, but you know what I mean. The sentiment of it. The sentiment of it, bro. So I'm not gonna, kill him totally. But that's the part that kind of needs to be pointed out, right? He still kind of has, he's still kind of vacillating in his mind, going back and forth between the manhood aspect, and kind of feeling like acknowledging the symptoms is taken away from it. So I sympathize, but we got to be able to move past that.
Mhm.
Especially somebody of his stature, right?
Totally. And it's also, I think it's as you and I are, clinicians, it's also kind of reading between the lines of what are some things we tease out, right? What are some of the red flags in there? There's
Right.
obviously I don't know Kodak Black personally. However, he alluded that yeah, he's got some overwhelming, stressful situations that he's had in the
Right.
past and that he's currently dealing with, right?
Right.
Something's, contributing to when he made that post. People typically don't just make that original post and do some of those actions just kind of like out of the blue, right? There's
Right.
something that's going on. So absolutely, there's definitely some cognitive dissonance. There's, some inconsistency and and that's the unfortunate part. I hope that the people that did reach out to him, his people that he has in his corner, people that he has in his, his life, are hopefully encouraging him, to get some form of support.
Mhm.
Whatever that may look like. I hope counseling, I hope some type of professional. Um, but this is, some of the things that not just him, but I feel like is really important for us to notice just with everyday individuals. And when you start to see a change in their social media presence, right? When you start
Mhm.
to see someone, making statements such as this, right? When you
Well,
start to notice like their social media profiles, maybe they're not necessarily posting as much, but it can be when you notice a change, especially in someone that you know well, that could
mhm.
be a predictor or that could like really signal a change in someone's mental health. right? If someone starts to make, they're talking about suicide or kind of talk as we talk about passive SI, where they're saying, I wish, I wouldn't wake up and, or I wish what would it feel like to not wake up? Or I wish I could go all the way back to the beginning, or I wish, all of these other different kind of suggestive thoughts or feelings of or thoughts or statements of hopelessness, right? These are some of the things that, and when people just abruptly delete their accounts, right, of someone that enjoys being on social media, like these are signs, I feel like, for all of us to really take heed, not just with his situation, just with people in general, for us to make sure that we do these wellness checks, because especially as we get into, the seasonal affect disorder, like, and I know that that's real, right?
Mhm.
The days are getting shorter, nights are getting longer, stress, we're coming into the holidays, got the whole aspect, COVID is still here, very, very present. You got a variety of different stressors that are taking place for people. And I think it's when we start to see behavior or actions like this from some of our friends and family, like via social media, this is absolutely a time for us to like spring into action and doing what we can in our own ability, or what we have control over is reaching out to individuals.
Well, well, the social support is definitely very important. Like my opinion in this specific incident, and I know like a lot of people are gonna have like had some extreme reactions, but I think what people have to realize, and we're talking about Kodak Black in this instance, but it's not specific to him. Like often this is what trauma looks like,
Mhm.
right? Incarceration, right? We talked about solitary confinement and the psychological impact last year. He talked about losing one of his friends to suicide, right? He's talking about community violence, right? He said thugging, but that's what he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? So all of these things, this is what trauma looks like. He's talking about feeling overwhelmed, right? So I think we're to a point where a lot of people, this is their life, right? And this is how they have to survive, right? And because of that, we minimize that, right? But this is trauma, and we have to understand that, of course, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse is also forms of trauma, right? But community violence is trauma,
Mhm.
you know and we have to take that serious, right? And even a person like this, who in some people's eyes has the world at the tips of their fingers, is still impacted by it, right? Because at the end of the day, he's still going home, he's still losing people, and money cannot insulate you from that. So I think that's the part that I think not only us, but I think a lot of people miss, right? Because a lot of people are going to look at his tweet, and they're going to say, well, what right does he have to feel suicidal, right? And that's not, obviously we know that's not true and it's not realistic. What people have to understand that this is trauma, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, and in addition to that, trauma doesn't go anywhere. Like, it doesn't, just because you get money doesn't mean that like everything's okay. So even the things that he experienced prior to, becoming famous, prior to, becoming wealthy, like if you experienced that in your childhood, or that community trauma in your teens or whenever, like that, you experienced that. Like,
Right.
money doesn't, it doesn't, your trauma doesn't evaporate. And just because, you're in a better, socioeconomic status situation doesn't mean that everything's fine.
Right.
So and unfortunately, people are just gonna harp on, okay, well, look what he's saying about he's thugging this, I can't take that seriously, like, what, he's not taking this seriously, or he's all these other different adjectives and descriptions that people are going to use. But no, like, he's experienced a lot of trauma. He's clearly, again, I don't know him personally, but he talks about, I mean, I know recently, like either a couple weeks ago, he's had some other legal issues. So there are different things going on in his life. Now, unfortunately, again, like you said, the fact that maybe he has to feel like he has to keep up an image or whatever type of lifestyle, you know, I get it. That's the unfortunate part that comes with that. Again, I just hope that, his social support, that he's able to get some type of, help, encouragement, some type of support in whatever form or fashion that looks like to him, that's going to be beneficial for him. So, we'll continue to watch this story also.
Yeah.
All right. So, Jay, It's football season. It's about to be basketball season, and something that we're gonna constantly see during these commercials are gonna be Nike. Just do it,
Mhm.
right? So Nike recently, is about a little over a month ago, Nike actually closed its headquarters and corporate offices for a week to give its employees some time for rest and recovery. All right. So their senior manager of their global marketing science department at Nike wrote that he said, "We're powering down for a full week off starting next Monday." This was August 23rd to the 30th. He said, "We're powering down for a full week off starting next Monday. Our senior leaders are sending a clear message to take time to unwind, or de stress. I'm sorry. Spend time with your loved ones. Do not work." He said, "In a year or two, unlike any other, taking time for rest and recovery is key to performing well and staying sane. This past year has been rough. We're all human and living through a traumatic event. But I'm hopeful that the empathy and grace we continue to show our teammates will have a positive impact and culture on working moving forward." So this, in addition to the week off, they also had like summer Friday hours, which means that employees were able to leave early or take the entire day off on that Friday. So
Okay.
well, what do you think, Jay?
I mean, you know what I think. I mean, I don't really have any negatives about this. I think the important point to make is that this is kind of putting your money where your mouth is, right? It's not necessarily more about always about paying people more, right? Because obviously, if Nike is giving people a week off, no matter how much they've earned, they're going to lose money during that week, right? So I think this is qualifies as putting money where your mouth is in terms of reinforcing like positive habits when it comes to mental health in terms of the work environment, right? Because when you do this, you know you're creating an environment where if your employees feel stressed or if they have a mental health condition, they'll probably be more likely or feel more comfortable addressing it, right, to a supervisor or to the appropriate um, through the appropriate channels at that job, right? Second thing, reason why I think it's important is that it allows people to kind of relax and de-stress in their own way, right? It's not like, yeah, come to the company retreat, you know, and hang out with your boss and go ziplining, you know what I mean? And put on a t-shirt and take a bunch of pictures for us. Like,
Playing that,
it's,
you don't want to play in that softball game? No.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's if you want to go hiking, if you want to sleep, if you want to, you know, they told you don't do work. If you want to do work, go on a vacation, whatever is going to help you to catch up and reduce your level of anxiety. So I think it's a good thing, you know.
So what I need to do is that I need to find out if Nike has any psychologist positions available.
Oh
That's what I need to find out.
man,
But no, I think this also, in addition to what you said, as far as putting your money where your mouth um, is also this coincides with Naomi Osaka, right? Because she's a Nike client, right? She's sponsored by
right,
Nike, and they were fully supportive of her when she took time off for her mental health, and as everything progressed from this spring, and they were fully supportive of her. And I feel like, you know what, this coincides with that, right? If we're gonna sit here and say and support our athletes and their mental health, then you know we should be doing the same.
definitely,
I like it also in the sense of, you know, not just having a week off, but actually having paid time or a week off, right? Because you know, and I know from just working, it's, you know, it's so crucial to have for employees to be able to take time off and they're not using their own time, right? They're
right,
not using their own sick or vacation time, because you know, like, things happen in people's lives where, like, you know, it starts coming down, especially towards the end of the year, where people don't have time. Right.
right,
And despite it's stressful, people start getting real creative and trying to finagle ways so they can take time off. And if even if they're not feeling well, they're still going to come in because they want to conserve their time. So I feel like this also just sends the message of, you know, yeah, like, you know what, it's on us, right? Take the time. And when you take a week off, that enables the person to do whatever they want. So whether they want to do stuff around the house that's going to enable them to maybe have later days later in the week, or stuff in their weekends free, or like you said, take a vacation, go see family, or do whatever like this, that's so beneficial, right? That is so crucial to just being saying like, hey, we got you, we're going to cover this for you, go do whatever makes you happy, right? So yeah, I feel like this hopefully sets the precedent. I know there were some other companies that also were doing this, were giving their employees a some time off. So I'm hoping that this starts to become the norm, that other companies and other organizations um start to do that, provide this benefit for their employees as well. So this is great, man. The only thing that I saw that I kind of had an issue with was that as I was doing like more reading about it, it appeared that like some of the part-time employees or some of like the retail stores didn't get time off. So I mean, I get it, like, companies have to make money, but if you are going to give, employees off, I feel like it has to be uniform, right? It can't just be, I don't believe it should be like, all right, well, only the corporate folks are gonna get time off and full-time people, and we have, our part-time folks aren't, right? Because I can feel like that can sometimes, create a disparity among employees against coworkers, against from employees and management. That could lead to a whole thing. So I do feel like it should be uniform, like close everything if you're going to give people a week off. But other than that, like, this is a great idea. Like, this is the way I feel like it's supposed to be, and I feel like we're definitely we're trending in the right direction with this. So yeah, absolutely, shout out to Nike with this.
Yep. I mean, again, like, I don't know if it's the CEO or president, vice, but they sent the word out saying do not work. So again, I just think it kind of sends a good message. And for them being such a large company, maybe other people will follow suit. Um, so and implement it in their own way.
Absolutely, definitely helps fight stigma. Because that stigma is even different in the work office or in the work environment, right? The stigma that, hey, you know what, your mental health is important, but guess what, you still need to come to work.
Right.
So it's a different, that definitely helps fight against that stigma in the workplace. So this is great. So yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna bring this up to my job. I know that. Especially, I don't know about you. I'm gonna bring it to my employer, and see what happens. I'll keep you guys posted on that.
I'm not. I know what'll happen.
Yeah.
So I'm good.
All
I
right,
answer
Jay.
that right now. The answer is a no at my job. See you in the morning.
All right, man. Anything else before we get out of here that we should throw out there to the people?
Not really, man. Just again, want to thank everybody that takes the time to listen. We appreciate it. Please continue to like the videos. And leave your comments if you have them, suggestions for any show topics, or anything we could add. So much appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't have much else to add to that. We appreciate everybody for tuning and watching. Again, the Black Psychologist Podcast at gmail.com. Like, share, and we appreciate the support. You guys are continuing to rock out and ride with us. And hey, man, we appreciate it, because without you guys, we can't be here. So thank you. Wish everybody good mental health, especially as we go into this short week for some people that have the holiday off. If you do have the day off, enjoy it, do something. Self-care is important. And that's all I got. Jay, I continue doing your self-care, man, with the camping and seeing the fights and all that. And we got the football season is still rolling through, good brother. So hey, man, enjoy, bro.
All right, my brother. Till next week, man. I'm gonna holler at you, man.
Yes, sir.
Later.
All right.